Do you like basketball? Basketball dong. I like, but I'm not good at. Yes, I'm not.
Me too.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the State of the League podcast, the only NBA podcast that is going to be breaking down what the Guerschon Yabusele pickup means for the Philadelphia 76ers. I am your host, Jack, a.k.a. Jokic Joestar. With me, as always, is the world-famous Pablo Escobar, and with me, as occasionally, is equally world-famous, equally mustachioed Jackson Frank, famous NBA Twitter smart guy, all that, reporter, blah, blah, blah. Jackson, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's actually a beautiful day out here in Philadelphia. The East Coast humidity has really died off the last few weeks, so we're getting to the fall weather and the late summer, and it's actually enjoyable to be outside and do things, and it usually has been. So I'm doing well.
Are you okay? So let me get your official stance on this because I agree with you. I was just dropping this to Pablo. It was 60 degrees when I walked to the coffee shop with my girlfriend this morning. It was incredible. Are you more of a, like, if you had to pick, are you summer or winter pilled? Because I feel like everybody likes fall and spring. It's easy to say like the transitional months are
Yeah.
cool, but like
Yeah.
if you had to pick one, especially Philly, that probably gets pretty cold up there.
Yeah, I've only had one winter there since I moved out here, and it was honestly not that harsh. I think it only snowed a couple of times. I don't dislike snow, so that's not an issue if it snowed more. I don't know, it's tough because I think like, obviously I'm in my mid-20s now, but we still have a little bit of the nostalgia of like summer break and stuff, but also covering the NBA, like, I love covering the NBA, but you still get a little more free time in the summer too, that same way. So it's still a summer break of sorts, but living somewhere where it's been humid for the first time, shifting from the Pacific Northwest, I would say out here I like winter more, but maybe if I lived somewhere where it wasn't as humid and I wasn't like feeling sticky and sweaty when I left the house in mid-July, I would feel otherwise. But I think out here I like the winter more.
Based. You don't have to elaborate beyond that. I got the answer I needed. I was fully ready to doctor that clip into making you a winter supporter, but here we are. It's good. It's good.
Hey, well,
I'm on the
the
record.
beautiful day you two enjoyed today is technically summer. Just we're going till September 22nd, so don't count your eggs.
There was a guy on Twitter who actually like legit pissed me off the other day because I was like, it's like a beautiful, like, this is like the day you talk about when you think about like early fall and stuff. And he was like, well, it's still summer. You can't just ignore the parts that you don't like. And I was like, okay, well, like every time I've left the house, my fucking feet have caught on fire for 3 months. And that's what you guys have continually defended to me. But now that it's survivable for the final 2 weeks of the season, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what you guys were on board with. All right, I didn't understand that whole time. So yeah, I'm not with that. It might be summer in name. We'll probably get a couple more summer days in there, but for me, it's pretty damn near fall already.
Wait, do your feet get too hot? Is that a thing?
No, I mean that's hyperbole. There is a street where there's no trees and like the sun, if you walk down it at like noon, your feet will get hot. Like you feel it, and you feel it like bounce back up at you from the concrete. But no, that was just like a turn of phrase.
I'll tell you what, January and February, let's check the suicide numbers compared to the stuff.
I'm not worried about that, man. That's their business. That's got nothing to do with me.
That doesn't apply to either of us. Like we're still alive. I'm not reciting empathy, but it's my
check me and
Jackson.
Check me and Jackson in February and January. You'll have 100% survival rate. That's what we'll be looking at, baby. Hell yeah! All right, today we are breaking down the offseason of the Philadelphia 76ers. We're taking a look at the upcoming year for them and what it might entail. I gave Jackson the same list that we're going to be giving to all our guests that we're going to try to answer for every team that we look at moving forward. And the first question on that list is how do you feel about where the 76ers currently sit as a franchise? What are the vibes like?
Yeah, I think they're in a pretty good spot, right? Their whole goal was to kind of target this 2025 offseason largely because they got off the Tobias Harris contract. one that Daryl Morey and that whole front office was not a part of offering, and people can talk about them trying to should have moved off it earlier or whatnot, but their whole goal was that. And then when they made the Harden deal, it seemed like one of the big stipulations was they didn't want to acquire any long-term deals. Everything had to be expiring. And they were able to land, a guy in Paul George, who was, the best free agent that I think was on the market that changed teams. I could be wrong, but it feels like less and less often we have big name free agents change teams, either extend or request a trade. And so that was kind of the guy they wanted. I am someone who's definitely lower on Paul George as a player in the year 2024. I think he's more of a fringe all-star, high-level starter, which is obviously still a very good player and one that's very much a tier above what Tobias Harris had given them for most of his time as a Sixer, let alone the last year where he really, really struggled, I thought. Mm-hmm. So that in that sense, I think it's very much a very good signing. The money is not one that I would want to be having to worry about in 3 or 4 years when Paul George is already declining athleticism is even lesser, and he's 37, 38. And
that'll be New Jersey's problem.
Yeah. The residents of Camden can deal with it.
Oh my God. Camden Paul George. That's fun. That's up there with like Memphis Allen Iverson. Camden Paul George.
The Camden 76ers just rolls off the tongue there. But even beyond the Paul George move, they retained Kelly Oubre, who was a very nice player for them, particularly when Joel Embiid was healthy. As a spot-up shooter, point of attack defender, or cutter. They upgraded on the backup center spot. I think Paul Reed was a pretty mercurial player, but clearly Andre Drummond is one of the better backup centers. He's got his faults, obviously. If for any team, it would be nice if he was a better finisher, but the rebounding is really good. He's a very good defensive playmaker. He's always ranking really highly on like steal rates and block rate. I think steal rates more so for centers. Really good hands, kind of gives you a little bit of versatility in pick and roll coverage. So that was a nice pickup. Obviously, I think they wanted to retain Batum, but it seems like Batum and his family really enjoyed the Clippers organization, so he went back there. But yeah, I think those 3 big moves were the headliner, and you got the deal done with Tyrese Maxey to extend him and have him on that rookie max now, and he certainly played like a star last year, and both in the regular season and most of the playoffs. So. Yeah, I think you have to be pretty encouraged about what they were able to do because they had a plan. They executed it pretty dang well. So you have to feel good about that. Obviously, when you have a guy like Joel Embiid who's roughly at his peak and not getting any younger, the goal has to be a title, or at the very least for the Sixers, the goal has to be winning 2 playoff series. So
yeah,
I don't know if the roster's of that caliber, but it certainly feels like they have a better chance of accomplishing that in the next couple of years, especially if they can find one of these years where Joel is healthy, and maybe the arrival of Paul George and the continued ascendance of Maxey allows him to kind of not have to be as full throttle in the regular season. They can get there, but yeah, definitely a successful offseason, but I'm not sure it was enough to get them to where they want to go in the next couple of years, but they're certainly closer to that than I think they've been recently.
Yeah, I'm on board with all that. Obviously, it's going to be tough to like stack yourself up against the Celtics or whatever and be like, okay, did we get there? No, but like to condemn the entire offseason as a wash because something like that didn't happen is fucking insane. And anybody who wants to ascend to the mountaintop really is going to have to expect to just be like a great matchup for that team individually, or hope, the Porzingis stuff is a little bit more serious than expected. A variety of different things. Overall, compared to every other team in the league, though, yeah, I think the Sixers are in a pretty damn good spot, especially when you consider all the offseason moves, which like that was my second question, how we feel about it. I think for the Sixers, it's not really that polarizing of an offseason. A ton of moving parts. But like when you look at the outgoing pieces, Batum, I liked him. Had the big playoff game, had several memorable moments as a Sixer.
Big play-in game, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a play.
It has to be memorable because it doesn't exist in Basketball Reference or anything. It's into the ether after it happens.
My great grandkids are gonna be like, "Let's get you to bed, Grandpa." Batum had 4 no-dip catch threes in one game. He sent the Sixers to the playoffs. All right, man. Take your lithium. We're going to sleep. Yeah. So overall, it was a good offseason for them. When you stack them up against the other teams that made a lot of moves this season, Paul George, I agree with you, the biggest get. As far as like free agents go and everything, I think with 2025, there was a couple of names ahead of him that ended up like settling down and they're not free agents anymore. I think one of them might have been Giannis, like working out a deal with Milwaukee, and a couple other guys where looking into the future, there were names besides Paul George, but the pool really narrowed down to him. And so for Philadelphia to pull that off, that's great. I think he does a lot for them in terms of getting Embiid rest, both in the regular season and like hopefully the postseason. The combination of Maxey and Paul George, I hope that gives them some more wiggle room as far as Embiid like sitting down for 5 minutes goes. Pablo, how do you feel about it?
Well, first off, one of the big gains for this, I forget, Jackson, you'll probably know this. The black jerseys are coming back. Are they coming back this upcoming season? Or
I believe it's not. I believe it's not this year, but I think what's been reported is that they are coming back, but it won't be this year, which feels like a misstep by the marketing team, especially given kind of the vibes around them. Right, they're just signing Paul George, Maxey's on extension. They added Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry is back for a year. It feels like this would be the year to do it. But yes, at some point, I think in the near future, the reporting has been they will be back, but it won't be for the upcoming season.
Imagine they win the title and they don't have the jerseys for that.
It's so risky because, like, is this team gonna be better than it is right now? Like, is there a path forward in the future for that? Because it's definitely a contender right now, but they're in a spot that makes me nervous because it's like, all right, we have the guy who's probably the best. Well, I would probably say best modern player in franchise history, right? Because they have like Dr. J and whatever. But outside of that, like, how often do you get a player as good as Joel Embiid? He's in his peak right now. How much longer does that last? How healthy is he gonna be?
Oh my God, he just left. Oh my God! All right, everybody, just nobody move. Yeah, what happened, genius?
I don't know. I was speaking and then it just cut out.
Perfect. The production value is insane, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you come to us for. All right, you're talking about how good Embiid was. Continue.
Yes. So I'm nervous because it feels like this year is do or die. Like, is there any chance? Is this a boomer bust year, Jackson? Do you think like? Or does the window extend into next year? I'm nervous.
No, I think that's basically where you're at. It's very much possible that the peak of Joel Embiid's per game was last year before he got injured. Paul George clearly past his best years, and I think it's fair to say that like Max is going to continue to get better. He's only 23, 24, but it feels tough for me to believe that his growth is enough to offset that. Right? Like, I mean, like if you say Maxey is the 34th best player in the league right now, whatever you want to say. You can say higher than that, lower, but it doesn't feel as though he's going to all of a sudden become a top 8 player in the next couple of years, right? Like, I think he's going to continue to get better and be a guy that's like always in the conversation for all NBA, awards. Assuming he stays healthy and reaches that 65 game threshold. But I think it's fair to say it's a boomer bust year. Kyle Lowry is a fairly important player for them as well. As kind of a supplementary ball handler. He's not getting any younger. Caleb Martin's probably right around his peak too. He's another guy that was a pretty heralded, free agent signing. Kelly Oubre is right around his peak as well. He's an important player. Drummond seems like he's been 28 forever, but I think he's finally 30 or 31. Yeah. So, not that like all these guys are like all these role players are what's going to drive things, but when kind of everyone, maybe your top 7 or 8 are all basically, aside from I guess Maxey and then maybe if Jared McCain makes the rotation. Are all kind of in their prime or whatever or at their peak. I think it's fair to say, especially because they're not the Celtics, right? Where the Celtics have some margin for error. They were so dominant last year. Say what you want about kind of the quality of teams that played in the playoffs. They were a great regular season team as well. They have more margin for error than a lot of teams, even a lot of champions, I think. Which is a class of 6 or below. So. I think that's a completely fair statement that it's boom or bust. And I think you really need kind of Paul George to be not just a guy who plays really well off of Maxey and Embiid, but can kind of amplify them and the surrounding core, and that's kind of going to be the big question for me, right? Is a lot of the talk is about how seamlessly he fits in, right? As one of the best off-ball shooters in the league, still a very good defender despite some slippage and inconsistency, especially last year. But can he be a guy that also makes life easier for Embiid, for Maxi, for Oubre? Can he run pick and rolls with Drummond? Can he find Jared McCain for spot up three? Can he help Kyle Lowry just be more of a spot up guy and off the catch player, rather than having Lowry handle the ball a lot like we saw last year at times? So those are kind of some of the questions for me. And just a lot hinges on Paul George, and I tend to be a little bit more of the cynical side of things with him, but still a very good player, and it's certainly possible that he finds a bounce back year without the pressure of a contract year looming. But
Hmm.
I feel like there's always a reason with Paul George that things maybe don't always live up to expectations, in the moment. Not to say he hasn't had a great career, and certainly live up to
We're on
expectations
like
for his
year
career.
6 of people being like, how could you expect him to play well in those circumstances, guys? How could you expect that?
Yeah.
How do you think they'll weaponize him on both ends? Because offensively, we know he can do a lot of stuff, but we don't know what he wants to do. Because he kind of like comes out and he's like, give me the ball more. I had the ball too much.
It's
let me shoot more. Man, am I just a spot up shooter? So yeah, who knows? I don't
yeah,
know what he wants to be, but what do you see his workload looking like in this offense? And is he clear number 3 priority in a healthy lineup between Embiid and Maxey?
Yeah, I think he's clear number 3 priority. To me, I think they will use him. Like, you'll see some on-ball stuff. They really tried to take Tobias out of that role. I don't think he's just going to be a one-for-one replication of Tobias, but I think they'll also try and give him some of what we saw. Like I said, Kyle Lowry's on-ball usage last year, and some of that was because Lowry was signed when Embiid was injured, and then they didn't really have another ball handler behind Maxey last year in the playoffs because Embiid, who overall was still pretty good in that first round, wasn't the same self we saw in December and January with his ball handling and all that. So Lowry had to do some of that. I think we'll see him as a pretty complimentary guy when the starters are out there. But we'll see him when Embiid rests. I think they'll try to get Maxey off the ball a little more because Maxey is so good off the catch, right? We saw how good he was when he played with Harden, but they didn't have a guy like that for him to slide off of, and he became a much better on-ball player last season. So I think the goal would be to him be kind of just a guy who can run off screens and hit a bunch of spot-up threes when the big 3 are out there. But when Embiid rests, I think the goal would be kind of Maxey and George to blend kind of their on and off ball skills, because that's ideally the appeal, right? Is you have 2 guys who maybe aren't 1A drivers of an offense on a really good offense, but can play off the ball as well and kind of complement each other. And hopefully when, for their sake in the playoffs, at least not lose the Embiid minutes, which has kind of been a telltale sign, which I think, you can talk about the backup center conundrum there that people always focus on, but to me, it's often felt like the support, like the guys are supposed to be the supporting cast and take the load. Haven't always done it. I think back to Ben Simmons struggles in the playoffs and Tobias' struggles, and as good as Harden has been at times in that second round series, 2 years ago, he struggled the year prior against the Heat. So can Paul George and Maxey kind of weather the storm, that occurs hypothetically when Embiid sits in a playoff game or even in the regular season?
Yeah, I think I did not realize just how bad the bench was in the Knicks series, looking back on it. Because, I saw something when I was looking it up where it was like they were minus 38 in Embiid. They won Embiid's minutes by 31, and then they were minus 38 in the minutes he sat. And I mean, as like a Jokic MVP season enjoyer, I understand that struggle where it's just like, okay, these minutes are a complete fucking wash. And you saw flashes, especially with how much time Embiid missed last year after the knee thing. You see these flashes of Maxey where it's like, okay, within 3 years, this is a guy who will be handily capable of like that role, if not an expanded, like running a starting high level offense role. He just wasn't ready for it last year. And so I think him taking a step forward, plus the addition of Paul George, them mixing on and off ball together, that's probably the most excited I've been for like non-Embiid stuff with the Sixers really, I don't know if it'd be since Jimmy Butler. Like, I haven't thought back and quantified all of that, but yeah, it's got me very hyped for next season for them.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I could be misremembering, but I certainly not when Max has been at this level. He's never played with a off-ball shooter like Paul George, right? Like,
Mhm.
Harden was good at a lot of things, but he's famously not been very good off the ball. He got better at it last year with the Clippers, but that's really not his a strength of his. And so you know, Pablo is talking about like kind of who does Paul George want to be, and so that's what I think is important, right? Is he willing to be a guy who's going to set those hard screens and like if they run a kind of
Hey,
a pick
that's
and pop.
dirty work. That's not
Yeah,
his job.
yeah, yeah,
I will
yeah,
say, yeah, I
exactly.
don't know.
But so that's why so much of it I think hinges on who Paul George decides to be. But then yeah, I think Drummond could help too. He's a pretty good screener when he's not setting like his one illegal screen a game that gets called. Pablo, obviously, as a Bulls fan, you're aware of some of his antics.
Hey, but he was too valuable to give up for a pick. We needed him for that second push.
Well, yeah, but at least you got a pick for Alex Caruso, so that all worked out too.
Oh yeah, the famous pick they got back in that trade. Oh man.
I'm sure the Thunder have so many picks. There's no way you didn't leave with at least one. But I think that'll
worst player.
Yeah, but I think that'll help too. Just someone who can set good screens for Maxey, let him get downhill, get in the paint. I'm curious to see what kind of playmaker Maxey is. I think you saw some growth there last year. And you've seen it throughout his career, but they have surrounded this team with a lot of shooters. They signed Eric Gordon as well. Like I said, Oubre was a fine spot up shooter last year. I think I need to look at the numbers, but I think at least during the healthy Joel games, he was pretty solid. Paul George, has a 7-8 year history of being pretty dang elite off the catch. Eric Gordon is the same way. Caleb Martin's kind of oscillated throughout his career, and we'll see if he is more of a is he a Heat culture guy, or is he going to be like Max?
Is he a brotherly love guy?
Yeah. Is he going to be like Max Strus and prove that he's not confined to just the Heat culture as a good role player, and especially with his shooting. I think he's been such kind of an inconsistent guy throughout his career. I could be wrong, but I think 1 year he's at 41%, and then 37, 34. He's kind of been all over the place.
Well, I mean, the last 2 seasons for him, I wrote it down. He's 35% in the regular season, and then through 28 playoff games, he's 43% with an increase in volume. So it's like that's one of the things people.
And I think the year prior when the Heat almost made the finals, he was like 41% when they were the 1 seed that year in 2022 in the regular season at least. So. But point being, there's a lot of shooters around them. Drummond's not really a guy you want finishing plays, but if you can set screens, help Maxey get paint touches, help George get paint touches, and make the proper reads, things like that, without him being on the floor, that's kind of what I'm most curious about. But yeah, I think right now that second tier in the East is basically like Sixers, Knicks, and Bucks. And to me, I think the Sixers have made the most substantial upgrades from last season. Now you could say that a fully healthy Dame or another year under Doc to kind of get assimilated, actual available Giannis in the playoffs could be bigger additions. And maybe maybe Randall's also an addition, a healthy addition, and Mikal does his thing, but they also lost Hartenstein. But point being, to me, like the Sixers made the most impactful offseason additions among those three. Now maybe the Sixers were in a slightly different tier to you. If you're listening to this and those two teams, but that's kind of where I think they stand, and that's kind of all you can ask for, right? If you're a member of the Sixers organization, is like, did you do the most to kind of give yourself a chance at being the 2 seed and avoiding the Celtics in round 1, or not, sorry, in round 2, or whatever it is. Now maybe the Celtics, with Porzingis injured for a while, aren't the 1 seed, and it throws things into all out of whack, and then maybe you want to try to avoid them, and you got to do all this weird stuff. But again, I think the Sixers have had a really nice offseason, and even if I'm not super sold on their ceiling, I still think they've made some really good improvements, and like I said, carried out the plan that they wanted. However long Morey's had this under his belt, the cap offseason plan I think has been going around for a while, so they accomplished it pretty well. Now it's just a matter of letting it play out.
Yeah.
How does How does Nick Nurse have this team play defensively, and how do you see Paul George fitting into that?
Yeah, I think, Nurse has always been a really, really aggressive defensive tactician. I think, aside from maybe his first year with the Raptors, his teams have ranked like top 7 or 8 in opposing turnover rate every season. And I think the Sixers were up there last year. Paul George, a guy is always really high in steal rate and making things happen in the passing lanes. Um, Kyle Lowry likes to get after as well. Oubre likes to get after his pretty nice hands. Embiid is a lot more versatile defensively in terms of kind of coverages than I think a lot of people give him credit for. He's not a Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis level switch defender, but pretty dang good kind of playing at the level and trapping at times. Now, obviously, with some of his ligament injuries, they don't do that. They don't have to do that a lot, but I expect them to be pretty aggressive next year. Maxey is great in transition. Obviously, dynamo there. Lowry's always been really good in transition, even though he's slowed, as he gotten older. But I think kind of the goal is for them to create a lot of turnovers and just kind of trust Embiid back there as well. Funnel a lot more stuff to him, jump passing lanes, aggressively help on drives, kind of try and stunt and enforce steals. So they're pretty creative. They'll throw a lot of zone out there too. They did it a lot last year, especially when Embiid didn't play. Or when either he was injured or he was resting in the game. They play a lot of zone. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, Drummond's a guy who likes to produce a lot of steals at his size. So I expect a pretty aggressive defense. I know Maxey likes to do that as well. Maxey, I thought, got a lot better defensively. Still not like, I wouldn't even call him an above average guard defender, but I think he got a lot closer to average than maybe the last few years. So I'm kind of curious to see what another year under Nurse allows for him, and just learning from a guy like Lowry too. Again, kind of an undersized. I wouldn't call Maxey undersized as a point guard, but undersized even at the guard position overall. Lowry's smaller than him, but they both kind of have that ferociousness defensively, particularly Lowry at his peak. So, Maxey isn't going to be what defines this team from being a top 7 defense versus a top 15 or something like that. But I think they'll be pretty aggressive and just kind of trust that Embiid's back there. And when he's healthy, a lot of teams and players get spooked from shooting around him. And he's also still a pretty dang good rim protector if they aren't deterred by his presence.
Yeah. I think 2 things you said. First of all, when you talk about Maxey not being like the differentiator, I agree. Like it feels like when guards take notable steps forwards defensively, it's almost exponential, where it's like if you were bad and you become livable as a guard, like
defensive player of the year, Trae Young.
Yeah, Trae Young, defensive player of the year, baby. It's more notable like when you watch, but also I just think the whole defense has a way easier time when you're just putting up some semblance of a fight, even if you're not a world beater as a guard. So I think that is something that could definitely help. And then I agree that Paul George had a bit of a slippage defensively last year, but I'm excited. I think he could play some of the better defense he's played over the past 5 years with Embiid behind him. It doesn't feel, Zubac's in Los Angeles. I think he's good. I love him. Not like a super vertical threat rim protector guy. And so for Embiid to be back there instead, and for Paul George to have that security, that insurance behind him to allow him to be aggressive on the perimeter, I think the combination of him and Kelly Oubre as just lengthy tools, defensive wings, it's very interesting, and I'm excited to see what they do with that.
Yeah, I think one of the issues I've often had with Sixers rosters is they've not been a super athletic roster. I don't really think Paul George enhances that, but I think retaining Oubre, Maxey is pretty athletic. Caleb Martin's got some speed to him. I would say Drummond's a pretty dang good athlete, especially at the center position. Even if he's not like a high flyer, he's pretty dang quick.
He made Chet fall down last year. He's agile, baby.
Yeah. So I think
Bona's super athletic.
That's true. Yeah, maybe they'll go with some 3 center lineups to amplify.
He's the next Jared Vanderbilt, some are saying.
Okay.
But I think that'll help. But I think I wrote about Paul George's fit in Philly maybe a couple months ago. Whenever they signed it, whenever that was, I think it was 2 months ago. Gosh, it feels like an eternity at this point. Because there's been so much basketball since with the Olympics and and all that. I feel like I've been watching a lot of notable NBA players for a while. So the offseason or the free agency pool pool feels like it was forever ago. Anyhow, I think like I don't think the Clippers ever ranked very highly during Paul George's tenure as like a high steal rate team. They were a pretty conservative group under both Doc and Ty Lue. Whereas Paul George has always been really, really good at producing takeaways throughout his career.
Hmm.
And like I said, Nick Nurse is pretty good about encouraging his guys to do that. So I think, like you said, that could help a lot. I'm curious to kind of see what he does as a low man. He's been inconsistent in that, but there's clearly really nice flashes throughout his career where he's a good low man, kind of has that verticality, that length. That would maybe allow the Sixers to maybe be a little more aggressive with Joel at times. Certainly with Drummond, they're going to play up because Drummond's best asset defensively is his hands, his ability to play at the level and kind of fluster ball handlers like that. So you're going to need Paul George back there. And like you said, that would allow Oubre to kind of be the point of attack guy. Maybe it's Caleb Martin out there as well. I don't love Martin as much in that role. I think he's more of kind of a wing defender in the sense of kind of closeouts, cut off guys, use his strength rather than fighting over screens as much. But yeah, I think Paul George should certainly be in for a nice defensive season. But as we keep coming back to, it just feels like, what does Paul George want to be? Like, what does he want to just be like the Sixers version of Joe Harris during those really nice Nets years? Or does he want to be like the prince who was promised, like the actualized version of what Sixers fans and Sixers brass hoped they were getting with Tobias Harris for 4 or 5 years there? And I don't know.
What a toxic relationship. I'm glad you guys are out of that, by the way. That's so insane. This is the year with Tobias Harris. He's going to settle in. He's got his money. We're good to go. This is the year.
But yeah, and it just, it's not even like a knock on Paul George. He just is such a mercurial player. And like you said, it feels like whenever he gets a microphone in front of him, whether it's a presser or now his podcast, the best option for him was something else.
Yeah.
And it's the Sixers can't really have that, just as the Clippers couldn't have that, because the Clippers and Sixers feel kind of spiritually linked for a lot of ways now with their general inability to make conference finals. Now the Clippers did do it. Their same color scheme, them having Doc, them swapping Harden and George, Batum playing there, Covington playing there. It just feels like they're linked. And maybe now it's the Sixers' turn to ride the Paul George roller coaster for all of its good and bad and in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. We touched on. They made a bunch of perimeter moves on the roster. We touched on Eric Gordon. We touched on Drummond. We touched on Lowry. I assume you like McCain, but that doesn't feel like
I'm just not like I watched a little bit of him, but like I'm not a college basketball guy, so like from like I watch and read things that smarter draft people put out, and he seems like a great shooter who can do a little bit of stuff as a ball handler. I don't think that's going to be something they ask much of him this year. And Pablo, I know you do a decent amount of draft work, and I could be wrong, but it felt like people all talked about how skilled he was and how good of a shooter and all these things, and how good his feel was. I just worry that maybe the athleticism isn't quite there for kind of an off-ball 2-guard. It feels like that's always the thing that, when there's these highly skilled players, it's like, oh, this guy should go higher. And then it's like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like I said, but that was just watching a little bit of the Sixers Summer League and a little bit of his stuff at Duke. Just felt like he didn't have great athleticism to kind of amplify some of his really good skills on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he is. I think the hope with him is he's described himself this way, is like he wants to go down the Jalen Brunson mold, where like he lacks traditional athleticism, but he has mass in his lower body, so he's gonna try and get opportunities at the rim like via strength and stuff like that. But realistically, like if that does happen, probably won't happen for a few more years, right? So, but rookie year, the most bankable skill is definitely the shooting. And so another guy he's compared himself to is Seth Curry, and Seth Curry's another Sixers guy. So could he fill in some Seth Curry minutes for them? I don't know, because Seth Curry had a little bit of self-creation, right? Like especially during the Hawks series.
He was like kind of the second side handoff stuff with Embiid and whatnot. Yeah. But I don't know how much he's going to play when you think about if Oubre is their starting 2-guard and Eric Gordon's their backup 2. I don't really have. Eric Gordon is just not a very intriguing player to me at this stage of his career. I think there's a reason that the Suns weren't enamored with him, and also like why he wasn't enamored with them. He tries to kind of do a little too much off the dribble. He's still a pretty good shooter, but him putting the ball on the deck feels like a bit too much of an adventure. And I think he likes to do that more than what the Suns asked of him, and probably what the Sixers will ask of him. Maybe Nurse is better about getting that out of his system than Frank Vogel was. I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's worse at it. But I could see a world where McCain usurps Gordon, and that could be either a great thing because McCain is playing better than anticipated, or because Gordon's such a disaster that they had to go somewhere else for a backup two guard spot. Um, but yeah, it's I think the main ones there are the main moves we already hit on for the most part, and I think there's going to certainly be the traditional adaptation to the speed of the game for McCain, just with some of the athletic limitations and being kind of more of a two guard who doesn't have quite the pop there, and is also going to have to be playing off the ball, and if he's even getting minutes. So it doesn't feel like this is a year that he's really kind of popping much in the rotation. But who knows? Maxey was kind of the same way his rookie year, and I'm not saying they're at all comparable as prospects, but Mac has certainly still had his encouraging flashes as a rookie that had Sixers fans pretty dang excited going into year two, upon which he took that starting job and kind of ran with it.
They're both
Damn.
great vibes guys.
It's true, yeah. I did see
smiles.
I did see that apparently I think McCain might have been on Paul George's podcast, and I think Maxey turned down. McCain asked him to be in TikTok, and Maxey said no. But they did golf together, I think I saw. So maybe that's where they'll do their bonding over the next few weeks until training camp.
I have full faith that they'll become good teammates and everything. But like, what an awkward first foot. To be like, you want to make a TikTok? No, man. And just like silence after that. So yeah.
It's also kind of funny because they're almost not that TikTok isn't big for 23-year-olds, but like Maxey's 4 years older than McCain too. Like there's it's such a youthful spirit, but there's still a little bit of a disconnect there where he's like that wasn't what a bunch of 23-year-olds. I mean, there are some, but Maxey certainly wasn't on TikTok when he was at Kentucky or anything like that.
Jared McCain's pulling up talking about Roblox at practice. Maxey's like, what the fuck? Oh, man. So, yeah, all in all, it's a good offseason. Sixers, I feel like they have a lot of reasons to be as optimistic as they've been in years, which leads me into my third question. What are your expectations for the upcoming NBA season? What would a disappointing season look like for you versus a surprisingly nice one?
Yeah, I think a disappointing season would be what's happened in the most of the last 5 or 6 years under this Embiid era, which would be a first or second round exit. I would be surprised by a first round exit, but just given the unpredictable nature of Embiid's health, unfortunately, it's certainly in the realm of possibility whether that impacts their seeding like he did last year, or he's compromised for the actual playoff, which he kind of was as well last year, despite him still being
with
pretty
the Bell's
good.
palsy. That doesn't count, guys. Come on.
Is that fixed now? What's the status on that?
I think he's okay. I mean, I clearly his face looked fine during the Olympics.
Yeah, the Olympics, I guess.
I can't say I wasn't holding up a magnifying glass, but he certainly looked okay compared to May. But I think a good successful season would be them making the conference finals. They should have higher aspirations than that, but they haven't made it that far. And I think too, I think also in that vein would be can they show that they're closer to the Celtics than maybe they are as close to a team like the Bucks or the Knicks? I think that's a tall task, but that should be the goal, right? Ideally, we kind of call this a boomer bust year, and I certainly think it's a reasonable label for it. But ideally, you feel so good about them that you can say, okay, we're getting closer to the Celtics. Can we run this core for a couple of years rather than just one singular year? Because we have Embiid locked up long term, because we have Maxey locked up, because we have George locked up, can we run this for a little bit, more than just one season? That would be important too. So certainly the conference finals, but even more than that, can you prove that you're at least within kind of striking distance of the Celtics to, capitalize on a huge game, right? In that second round series a couple years ago, can you steal some games because you have stars capable of exploding like Harden did? So that would be kind of the big thing there, is proving that you don't need, a Porzingis injury, or a cool shooting series from Derek White,
Mhm.
or Tatum, or Drew Holiday, things like that, or a turnover prone series from Jalen Brown, something like that. Like, can it be like your own outlier performances from key players that kind of drag you into a really competitive series, whether that means you win or lose, would be kind of the goal. And ideally, for their sake, that happens in the conference finals, right? Nobody would care if it happened in the second round again, where it was like, well, they made it to 7 against the Celtics, like that. Like, this is our year next year. Like, nobody's gonna fall for that one.
Oh my god. Yeah, I can't imagine if that happened. I just know the entire narrative immediately would be like, Embiid chokes game 7. Oh my god! Like, they go 7 against the Celtics, and like that's immediately what would happen. Yeah, it's been tough, and so yeah, this question I feel like is kind of self-explanatory with the Sixers. I feel bad for making you rehash all of the ups and downs of the last few years, but I do genuinely believe, because when you look, not even what Embiid has been like in the past regular seasons, but when I look at what he was like in the Knicks series with all of like the health stuff, I still firmly believe that's like one of the 3 or 4 best individual players we saw in the East last postseason. Like, he was at an insane level. Obviously, in the games he exploded offensively, 50 in the Garden, whatever. But I also thought he was a really high level defender. And when you compare them to like if they matched up with the Knicks again, that's where the loss of Hartenstein would be massive. Like, if his Mitchell Robinson minutes are now up against Jericho Sims or like OG Anunoby guarding him in the post or something, that's a completely different series. And so I do feel like when you talk about their own outlier performances, that was a really good way to put it, because I feel like they have a lot of guys who are capable of having big games, or in the case of Maxey and maybe Paul George, big series, to really propel them up into their own separate stratosphere from the rest of the East. Whether or not that happens, I'm not sure, but I like them. I like them a lot. Pablo, what do you think?
I overall, so I have a question. How do you think he stresses the current iteration of the Celtics defense? How do you think he stresses them compared to someone like Luka? Like, is it more of a challenge for them based off like their big man depth or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the advantage ideally, and it's not the like it's not quite the same, because I think Jokic does things differently and just better. I think he uses physicality better and things like that. But why the Nuggets, like why people thought the Nuggets would be the Celtics in the finals last year, was because of the matchup nightmare that he offers, right? Because he's such a like their depth is on the wing, and on their ability to have like 4 or 5 defenders guard 1 through 4 pretty comfortably at times. And Jokic is obviously not 1 through 4. Embiid's not that either. And so kind of the ability to punish the switches better. Now, Embiid's had his issues with Celtics, whether it's Al Horford throughout the years, but or just kind of their ability to send timely help and doubles and all that. But that's the idea, right? Is that because you can have a guy initiate possession from the inside and be so close to the rim, kind of punish some of their switching things, and kind of put Porzingis in pick and rolls where I don't think Porzingis is great. I think Porzingis is a really good roamer. I think he's a really good kind of rim deterrent, but there are some things you can do against him in pick and rolls. I thought if the Mavericks don't have any chance in that finals, it was going to be an ability to kind of force Porzingis on an island, or not an island, just like into a pick and roll coverage, moving his hips, swiveling his hips. But obviously the Mavericks lack kind of the 5-out shooting to kind of do that. They let Porzingis roam, and also Porzingis didn't play very much because he was injured. But that would be kind of the idea again, right? Is that the Sixers in their starting lineup they'd go Maxey, Oubre, George, Martin, and Embiid, and if Martin's having a good series, which who knows. But he has some juice, right? His ability to kind of attack closeouts, make some shots. Oubre the same way. So like you wouldn't be able to just stash Porzingis on a small guy or a non-shooter in Rome. You'd have to kind of put him on Embiid, and Porzingis can't guard Embiid, right? So he challenges them in a different way. He neutralizes some of their switching heavy defense. I think Maxey also has some speed to, exploit. I think Jalen's probably the best defender for Maxey, but it's not a super speedy group, right? I mean, and it's hard for anyone to slow super quick guys.
Mhm.
But that would be kind of the idea there is can Max continue to punish switches, and then, for most teams, yes, Paul George against the third best defender is pretty enticing, but the third best defender for the Celtics is, I mean, it just depends on the matchup, right? And
Mhm.
it's two or three or four guys that, for any given stretch can look like at least worthy of some all defensive team consideration.
It's
Um,
Tatum, Holiday, or Derek White. Pick your
yeah,
poison.
yeah, and then obviously you saw what Jalen did at the point of attack at times against Luca in the finals, and that's why the Celtics are the reigning champs. One of the
We
better
saw what Al
defensive teams.
Horford did to Luca somehow.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
yeah,
I'm so sick of these motherfuckers, dude. It's like you ask, how do they stress Boston? And it is like a fair question. And then I'm like going through all the avenues in my head. And like every time I'm like, oh well, Embiid changes that dynamic of the game. And then like if you manage to like I was thinking getting Porzingis into foul trouble if they are able to like force the Porzingis Embiid matchup. It's cool and it's nice. And I feel like that also has the added benefit of like Porzingis was a pretty big offensive piece for them last year. So removing him would offer that advantage on that end of the floor as well. And then my brain was like, Porzingis didn't play in the playoffs last year and it didn't matter. And I'm like,
yeah,
God damn it,
yeah.
dude.
I think the big thing would be is that uh, Horford at this stage of his career is very much best as a switch defender. He's not very good in drop. We saw some of the
Mhm.
stuff the Cavs did hit him in round two when the Celtics stayed in drop early before going to switch heavy stuff. And if you run like a Baxi Embiid pick and roll and you switch that, let's say it's Jalen or Derek White or whatever, because Derek White was very good on Maxi 2 years ago in that series. Derek he can't guard Embiid. As good of a defender he is, as wonderful a player, he just simply can't. And so that would be kind of the advantage there. But so that's kind of the thing to me is that you have a guy in Embiid who can be an interior hub and also but he's also complemented by a very good pick and roll ball handler and Maxi who can kind of still let Embiid kind of do his thing where he saunters to the free throw line, hits those jumpers. Um, but at the same time, Maxi has the ability to explode for 30 or 35 in a way that Harden wasn't able to consistently in that second round series. Not to say he didn't do it a few times. We saw those two big ending games, but he's not the same level of perennial 25 point per game scorer like Maxi is at this stage of his career. Clearly had a level that he, when Harden had a time when Harden was, but he's more of that kind of that 17 to 21 range guy these days, and that kind of limits him. So that would be kind of the thing. It's just kind of the duality of Embiid and the rise of Max to stress them. But it sounds kind of nice on paper, and then we watch it play out, and the Celtics hold the Sixers to 96 points in four of the 7 games, and none of it matters.
Oh, it's beautiful. This is why we love the sport.
This latest like evolution of Embiid has been him like playing higher up, right? Like near the free throw line, kind of like his Dirk type game. Against the Celtics, do you think he would punish them primarily up there, or would he have to like go down low?
I think he likes playing from that kind of that nail range, and he's talked about it because he can see everything better. Like when you post up, you like the doubles, the angles to read doubles are much harder and they're easier to send. So you kind of have that blind side. When you post up, when you catch the ball at the free throw line, like you can see everything. And so I think he likes to play there more. And for him, it's just about like he is a very good passer. I think the last few years you've seen it, but he can kind of tend to get flustered. Still, like he can kind of revert back to old tendencies. You can tell there's times when you kind of fight and what he knows he should do versus what kind of is like an easy thing for him to do. So I think he would still play there because he'd have the shooters, you have the cutters, right? You'd have kind of Martin and Oubre roaming those corners, those short corners as cutter / corner shooter. But you can I think he's also gotten better at finding the like strong side cutter from the post, so you can go there at times. But what he likes best is he just likes rising over guys. So if you switch, you have Derek White on him, like you're not going to be able to stop that. Right? Well, part of the reason that Mitchell Robinson gave him some issues, aside from Embiid's lift being poor, is that Mitchell Robinson has that length and that quickness to kind of contest his jumper. Not a lot of guys have the ability to contest the jumper of a 7'1", 7'2" guy with pretty soft touch. So I still think he likes to play there, especially if he's getting smaller guys on him. But at the same time, you might want to kind of lower your shoulder every now and then and kind of inflict some pain and take advantage of the small
Porzingis.
yeah, or just just make put a shoulder in Tatum's chest and make him less likely to take a hard drive the next play and try and finish the contact, because obviously we've seen how good of a driver he is these days. So something like that, I think you got to use your physicality. And that's one of the things that I think why the Nuggets are such a good matchup, or were a good matchup.
Rest in
Bad
peace.
matchup, a bad matchup for the Celtics, I should say, is because Jokic is so good at kind of grinding guys down with his physicality, and the Celtics don't have anyone that can really match that. But we'll see how the Nuggets match up.
We'll see how the Nuggets match up with the West. I don't think we need to be. I don't think we need to be looking at the Boston Celtics matchup just yet. All right. So we can get into my fourth question. Is there a mid-season trade you want or expect this franchise to make? And I know I've seen you make some questions about lack of size at the power forward position. Do you think that'll work itself out over the course of the season, and just generally like mid-season moves? They did so much in the offseason. I don't think there necessarily has to be an answer to this, but just curious how you're feeling.
Yeah, I'm not fully in tune with kind of where they're at with the second apron type stuff. I know they're fairly limited, so like they don't have a ton of options. They don't have a lot of mid-sized contracts either. But I think kind of the classic target that a lot of people have talked about is Dorian Finney-Smith at some point. They've got all those picks. I think DFS is only making. It was weird to call him Smith. I've never done that before. Especially considering he has a hyphenated last name. If Dorian, if you're listening to this, apologies. And apologies for calling you by your first name. We're not on that.
He's on here. Yeah, he's in the Patreon.
He'll be on next week, actually. So we'll be sure to ask him.
But I think he's the class. He's got a mid-sized deal. You can move. I think some combination. I think Drummond has a decently sized deal. Not a vet man. I could be wrong. But that would be kind of the one. They have all their picks. Not all their picks, but they have a decent amount of picks. So I think just something to add some more wing size, because I keep seeing people project Caleb Martin to play the 4, and I think Caleb Martin's like 6'5".
Yeah. He's not 4-sized.
Yeah. Paul George should play the 4, but again, I don't. Paul George wants to be a 2/3, so who knows? But yeah, I don't have any specific trade that comes to mind there. Aside from that one, I think Cam Johnson makes some sense as well, but his contract is pretty significant, and he doesn't really he fits in really nicely offensively as kind of a 4th or 5th cog, but he doesn't offer them anything more defensively. And now maybe they don't end up needing that. Maybe kind of the addition of George and Martin, and a healthy year of Embiid and another year of growth from Maxey and all that ends up being enough, but he doesn't really address that. But I do think they are a little small in the wing. I'd be curious to kind of see what they can do there. I could also see them maybe trying to go for one more ball handler if Paul George decides he just wants to be an off-ball guy, and maybe his own limitations kind of enforce that too nowadays. I think his decision-making and kind of versatility as an on-ball guy has been limited, so maybe they go out and get another ball handler that kind of lets Maxey play off the ball more, or kind of alleviates more pressure for him, things like that. But those would kind of be the two. It's just adding a little more size and girth on the wing, and then maybe a ball handler if that ends up being a pressing need. But Embiid also handles the ball pretty significantly when he's healthy. So, and you have Lowry and you have Paul George. So, but that would be something that I could see end up happening if Embiid's end up being compromised, and George is even less of an on-ball player these days, and Lowry as well if he gets older. So, yeah, wing and ball handling would be kind of the two that I would imagine they target come deadline, if those are things that, like if there's glaring issues with the roster, those would be kind of the two things I think that could be pretty prevalent shortcomings.
Okay.
Sounds like you need Josh Giddey, big wing who can handle the ball. I maybe hear you out for some trades for him.
Oh, okay. Caleb Martin for Josh Giddey, 1-1.
Drummond for Giddey. The Bulls can have Drummond back.
Man, I mean, I guess I'll take it if you're.
You can't get in the way of Jalen Smith playing time. I mean, a Vooch Jalen Smith front court defensively is it's going to be a spooky season for 29 teams.
Oh God,
Vucevic needs to be thrown in jail for all those graphics of like wide open shots. It's like, did you know Vucevic actually averages 80 open shots a game? It makes 0.
Yeah, I saw one of those on Twitter where I've never seen somebody that into the bottom right corner of one of those graphs so far, where it's like horrid efficiency, a million shots a game, and it's just like Vucevic alone in his own little country down there. So
I
yeah,
remember
that,
one time Zach Lowe went on a big rant because the Bulls a couple of years ago, they were like really high in quality shots generated, like open shots generated. And so people were like, well, it's not the offense isn't bad. They're just not making shots. And Zach Lowe was like, they're leaving bad guys open.
Yeah.
If bad players take open shots, they're bad shots.
Oh man, I like how it all comes back to what will Paul George want to do, and the Bulls are bad. That's the two truths that the basketball
truths of
universe
the
kind of
universe.
circles around.
Yeah, it's just with the Sixers, like there's a lot of things you can talk about, and they're worth talking about. But the reality is, what is Embiid like health-wise come spring, and what sort of player does Paul George want to be? And those are kind of the most important questions. There's fun other stuff to talk about, but if you're trying to project a season, everything else feels a little bit secondary to those two pressing questions.
That's good timing. I have a little rapid fire question game.
Oh, you got a game for? Okay.
It's not really a game, but so
Then why'd you? Whatever. Go.
So the Joel Embiid health confidence. I'm gonna name some guys. I want you two to say who do you have more confidence in staying healthy. Let's say for like throughout a postseason run, like to finish out the year healthy. So Joel Embiid versus Kawhi Leonard. Who would you rather?
I'm gonna go Embiid.
Yeah, I go Embiid because Kawhi just feels like wear and tear at this point. Like nothing happens. Last year. It's just Kawhi's gonna miss a game, and then by the way, Kawhi is going to play like 2 games the next 6 weeks, and when he does play, he's going to be on one leg. So I'll go Embiid as well. But
Kawhi,
like there's nothing to heal. He's just bad. Like his body's just broken.
yeah.
Kawhi's not playing tonight because he's having surgery. He's done for the year. Like that.
His quad is rotting. Joel Embiid versus Tyrese Halliburton.
I'll go Halliburton here. I feel like the sample size is so small for like calling Halliburton like an injury health risk type of guy.
Yeah, I'll go Halliburton as well. I think that's a pretty easy one for me.
Joel Embiid versus Kristaps Porzingis.
Ooh. Oh damn! Now that's hard.
I'm gonna go Embiid because just like I think Kristaps played like maybe 1 or 2 back-to-backs last year. Like the Celtics were very cautious with him, and it didn't matter. He got injured twice in the playoffs, actually. One of which was an injury like nobody had heard of in the finals.
Oh, what was it again?
I don't remember.
It was like his the sheath of one of his tendons on like his ankle explode. Like one of the tendons was loose. It wasn't torn, but it was wiggling around in a way that was not good, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'll go Embiid too there. Yeah, and the Sixers are like demanding Embiid do like arduous shit during the regular season sometimes, and I'll go Embiid.
Here's the official name of the injury according to ESPN: a torn retinaculum and dislocated posterior tibialis tendon. So.
Damn. Yeah, it's bad when like the narrative around the injury from the coverage when it happened is just a unanimous so what's going on with him? Like what the hell happened to this guy? And no one has an answer.
Yeah.
We need every injury to be named after like a Greek myth. Like the Achilles is just so catchy. Joel Embiid versus Jimmy Ferris Bueller Butler.
I'll go Jimmy.
I'll go Jimmy here.
Yeah.
All right. Joel Embiid versus Zion, newly slimmed down Williamson.
Ooh, this one. Oh, this feels like the toughest one yet, I think.
Yeah. You know what? I'll go Zion because if it works out, then that's like the happier reality for me. I'm like, holy shit, we get a full playoff run of Zion? Okay.
Oh, if you had to choose right now, I won't ask Jackson because the conflict of interest. But if you if you could guarantee healthy Zion or guarantee healthy Embiid for this upcoming season, who would you take?
So like The duty of me as like a basketball fan is probably to say Embiid, because like Embiid has consistently been like one of the 30-ish best talents of basketball we've ever seen. But like bias and like me wanting to see what Zion looks like for 70 games in the playoffs, I would probably just like go him in my gut.
Who would you take, Jackson?
I think I would go Embiid just because like Zion's still what 24 years
Yeah.
old. Like
Oh,
somebody someday will ask me another hypothetical with Zion and like that, and I'll get to answer Zion that time.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
But I'm gonna say Zion for the healthy one as well, just because. And I don't even know if this stuff is true, and but it feels like there's a lot more reports about like Zion having like, oh, like could he get his diet right? Could he eat better? Like things like that. Like could that help him like stay healthier? Whereas you don't really hear that with Joel these days. It's just like Joel's talked about like hiring a private chef already before and like getting things right. It just feels like that couldn't happen. That couldn't happen for Joel because he's already done it.
Yeah.
So I'll say I have more faith in Zion ending a year healthy. But considering we've only seen it one time, I guess. I mean, I don't even know if I don't know when we've seen it with Joel. So maybe one time with Zion is more than anything we've ever. I think the only time that Joel ended the season healthy was in the bubble, and that was when they played four games against the Celtics. And he had like
with
he had
the
like
3-month break where Anthony Davis, famously durable, is just like the most dominant player on the planet for the entire finals.
He only had to play 1 month of basketball, and it concluded in a first round sweep with Simmons sideline. So I'll say Zion for that, but
I'll say this whole thing, it's tough because Embiid, with everybody else, like you're looking at Halliburton and you're like, ooh, like soft tissue injury or blah, like all these different things.
And he's like,
Embiid,
I got back surgery in high school.
Yeah. Halliburton's like, I wasn't playing in the Olympics because my fucking back is fucked up. But with Embiid, it's like, oh yeah, I got like elbowed in the head 3 times in a minute and a half, and that's why I'm hurt. And so individually you look at a lot of these and it's like, god damn it, just like, can we be more careful with this guy? And then the sum of all of them, you pile them up and it's just this mountain of like, is he just horrible luck? Like what's going on? And that feels like what it's like a lot of times, where compared to the Zion thing, maybe he's not putting in 100% to the diet and shit.
And also maybe it's not physically possible for humans to be 6'7", 280, and the most explosive.
Maybe the people who said that pre-draft with him weren't just trying to knock him down a peg. They were actually saying that a guy doesn't usually move with this much force and this much power.
They're just jealous because they can't jump that high.
If I were the emperor, though, I would execute them for. I don't care if it's true. If you say anything bad about Zion, that's
basically how my process was 5 years ago when I was still doing draft work and people bad know Zion. I was like, you don't get it.
You're an idiot.
You just hate the hype around him. You think that's BS, and here we are 5 years later, and they were right, but. They're still my sworn enemy for sure.
They may have been right about his defense, but they were losers for being right about it. Whatever. I got 2 more names. Joel Embiid versus Ja Morant. Injuries plus. Will he wave a gun around?
Injuries. Will he piss off Adam Silver again? I'll go. Ja, that feels easy. We've seen Ja pretty impressive in a couple playoff runs already.
Yeah, I'll go Ja too. That feels. I'm comfortable with that.
And then the final one: Joel Embiid versus Jamal Murray.
Oh, Jamal, but we've seen it. It's literally this year was a fluke. It's fake. He got it out of his system. You know, we're the Spurs. It's every other year. Okay.
Damn, I didn't want us to agree on every single one. I think Zion was probably the closest I got to saying otherwise, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but Jamal does play such a style that is like conducive to just these little like bumps and bruises that end up accumulating by the end of the season. Because he's such a tough player. Not that Embiid isn't, but I remember like his rookie year, he played like a sports hernia or something like that, and then he tore his ACL, and then last year he was dealing with whatever, and then in the Olympics he was dealing with whatever / also being a really poor decision maker and all that. But I'll go Jamal, but it definitely does feel like they caught lightning in a bottle in 23 with him being able to kind of parlay all that. Because the last time we saw him, I mean, the only other time, like he had some really, really great moments in the 2019 playoffs. But obviously his like coming out party was in the bubble, and again you had to play basketball for like a month. Like after 3 months off, it's like, I mean, most guys are pretty dang healthy and good. If the playoffs were from October to November of every season, I'm sure that a lot of
Well,
players look
the
pretty
in-season
good.
tournament, the most important event in basketball now, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of stuff like that.
That's true. How could we just? I mean, look at Halliburton and AD. They showed out for those, and they've had their injury issues. AD hasn't really had any recently, but throughout his career, and obviously Halliburton this year. So yeah, who's to say?
Who's to
Jamal
say?
Murray's legs might be permanently messed up from all that hot tea he was putting on him growing up.
Oh my God, shut the fuck up, dude. With Murray, it sucks because in 23, when you talk about like catching lightning in a bottle, the team was still talented enough, and like the depth wasn't where it was in previous seasons, but it was still like a good deep team where you could be like, okay, Jamal, take your time. You don't want to play tonight. That's all right. Like it was a ramp up season. And this year it is not going to be that. Like it's going to be, Jamal, we need like 65 games of like high production from you. Otherwise shit gets nasty in the West really quick.
And wait, he's not signed to an extension yet, is he?
No. All of the stuff I've seen from like the reporters I follow is just like, it's coming in the next few days. I don't want to say anything, but it's coming down the pipeline, and it's been like that since like before the Olympics. So I'm not going to hold my breath on that front.
Will he be incentivized? Like, is there any chance where it's like he tries to make All-Star, All-NBA to get a bigger contract? Is that in play with him?
I mean, originally, like, I believe the reports every time I see him that it's coming. And so if it happens, I'm wrong. But that's like what I've been the impression I've been under this whole summer is that like he'll get more money if he does anything like that. And I mean, ostensibly from the postseason run and everything, he is that caliber of player, although I don't know how realistic making the All-Star team in the Western Conference is going to be unless the Nuggets are just like this juggernaut of wins that I also don't foresee happening. So he might want to do that. I don't know, like, if he will do something like that, but maybe that's why he hasn't signed it. Are you done with your game?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I would call that a game, though.
Yeah, that was fun. I liked it. All right, so we did the midseason trade. We can knock out these last two real quick. Which player are you most looking forward to see progress this season? Who? I mean, I feel like there's another obvious answer here with the Sixers, but how you feel?
Yeah, Ricky Council, obviously.
Ricky Council.
We actually didn't even talk about him at all. I think he's a guy who could add some.
He's good. He is good.
He could add some athleticism on the wing to that rotation and gives them some downhill juice. But I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, I think for me, obviously Maxey is answering one, but I'm also curious to kind of see what year two of Oubre looks like in Philly. We're always people especially on NBA Twitter, are always like, who's the next Aaron Gordon, PJ Washington, these guys. I'm not saying Oubre is of that caliber, but I think he fits in the general idea, right, of a guy who'd been overextended in previous places and then found a team that is a pretty consistent winner at the very least, and found a really good role there. So I'm curious to see can Embiid play 65 games and Oubre shoots 37% from three and 55% on twos and continues to add impressive defense.
And doesn't get hit by a car.
Yeah,
stay off that bike.
Yeah. Yeah, that would help him for sure if he doesn't get by a car. But given the way people drive in Center City over here in Philly, who knows?
I saw you tweet about that where it's just like fucking crazy.
Well, yeah, I don't even live in Center City, but I'll go for a run and I'll have people like zoom by me in their cars, like a residential neighborhood, and I'm like you don't even like honk, like you can honk at me, I don't care, but I'd rather get honked at than have like a broken pelvis. But I would say Maxey or Oubre for me with an outside shout out to Council because I kind of completely forgot about him. But I think that's also because they have upgraded the wing depth. But it'd be cool if he made a run there. But yeah, I think for Oubre, I think I'm most excited for just because I thought he had a really nice year last year, and it's cool to from kind of find a place where he fits a good role. So I'll say him, but obviously Maxey is the easy choice there that I'm excited for as well because he's just such an easy player to enjoy, regardless of your allegiances. If you're a Celtics fan or I was going to say Kentucky basketball rival, but I guess it'd be Tennessee or something. Louisville. Louisville's their rival. But they've been so bad lately that I forgot about them as a as a
I
program.
bet
on
that
the
makes the
inside.
Yeah.
people you're addressing really happy.
We on this podcast, we are Maxi haters because we're most improved player award purists.
Purists.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Purists.
forgot about this angle.
Well,
It's about the
you're,
trajectory.
yeah. I'm sure if Kobe White had been the Maxi role, you'd feel the same. But your purity your standpoint, I actually did think Kobe White should have won
It's
last
evolving.
year. If it makes you feel any better, yeah, I thought Kobe White should have won.
No,
Oh,
I
man.
will betray all my allegiances for most improved player award purity. If Wemby wins it, we riot, and Wemby's my goat already.
That's true.
I just don't see I'm not a purist like that. Like I think it's fine if a guy ends up making the biggest leap, but I just don't see or most like impressive or most challenging. But like, what do they expect Wemby to like? Is he going to average like 31 and 15 and 6? Like what is he going to do? There's going to be some other guy who goes from like 12 points a game to 23 and has an incredible like Wemby's going to probably average 26 next year, and he's already averaging like 23 the second half of the season. Like I just don't like. I don't. How is he the betting favorite? Like he's not going to be the most improved player. Like he's just not. Like
Well, because I think it's as simple as he was on bad team, so that he was playing bad basketball last year. If he was on good team, better team, potential play-in, playoff team, that's way different. He's doing
Yeah.
winning basketball.
And I don't even see that.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
I
not
know-
going to be good.
like the only two positive players they added were Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes. Those guys aren't like 5-win
Don't
players.
get me
like,
started on Harrison Barnes. Oh my god.
Well, that's a
not,
champion.
but like, yeah. But yeah, unless they think Chris Paul is gonna be able to throw like Wemby like 40 lobs a game,
Mhm.
or like,
Could be the move.
but
Yeah,
Stephon Castle's jumper, it'll happen.
it's coming. He hit one in summer league. His pull up was looking really nice.
Oh, by the
And-
way, Jackson, you said everyone's trying to figure out the next Aaron Gordon and everything. We do have a definitive answer on that. It is Alex Sarr. So we're gonna have to wait, but it is Alex Sarr.
yeah.
Are you serious? We've never. Okay, whatever. I don't remember us doing that bit. I think Alex Sarr is going to be a really nice piece for the future of the Washington Wizards for
the
years
future,
to
for
come.
someone's future.
No, I think him and Cooper Flag. It's gonna be him, Flag, Koulibaly. Oh my God, no one's gonna score. It's gonna be insane. No one's gonna score on them. They're gonna score.
No,
well
they'll just score on Jordan Poole's man instead.
Hey, Jordan Poole, once he got moved to the bench last year,
That's a champion too.
passable basketball player.
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
they're gonna start him again so they can get Cooper Flag.
Oh yeah, I do like the nod to Oubre for the progression thing next year because I didn't really like. I agree with you. I liked him a lot last year. I did not really. He shot 31% from three on the season,
Yeah.
and the playoffs it sticks in your mind a little bit more. And there he did shoot 39%. So like
Yeah.
obviously the memory is altered a tad bit, but like all season last year. Whenever I was tuning into Philly games, I was like, they got this guy on the minimum. That's insane. Like he's constantly making high level
Yeah.
plays. And so, yeah, just another year of synergy with like the big offensive pieces in Philly. I think that will be super cool to watch. I like
Yeah,
that answer.
absolutely.
And then the last one, which team do you think will win the NBA title? Who you picking here?
Oh God, it's hard to not be boring, but like, how do you pick against the Celtics? Like, the West, even with like all the moves that OKC made, I think that team still has some pretty big playoff question marks. Obviously, Denver has their question marks. Dallas, moving some key players around, and whatnot. Minnesota, can you get another year like that out of Gobert? It's hard for me to pick any of those teams. I'll just go Boston. Like they were so dang good last year, and they have everyone back basically. They also now have Lonnie Walker.
Yeah,
I mean,
just throw him in.
who isn't who isn't going to make or break anything. He's even on an Exhibit 10, which means he might not even make the roster. But
Mhm.
him as like a fifth guard is a pretty nice thing to have. None of their like the only thing I could really see is like if Horford really falls off the cliff this year and Porzingis is injured all season, then they become pretty vulnerable. But their guards are going to be right there again. Their 2-star wings are going to be there. Pritchard was a really nice rotation guard last season.
Mhm.
Obviously the half court heaves got all the attention, but he was just a really solid player off the bench for them. So maybe Tillman, maybe Tillman becomes a nice corner 3-point shooter this year. Hauser, they got him back. So
Yeah.
It's hard to pick against them, but I wouldn't be surprised if if OKC won, or if Denver won or anything like that. But it's
I
just
like
hard.
that idea. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's
I
just
mean, I
hard to
wouldn't be
pick.
surprised either.
It's just hard to pick against Boston. It just we're so much better than basically everyone last year, and there's not really a reason for them to think they won't be this year, aside from Porzingis' injury. But like we've said multiple times, Porzingis barely played last year in the postseason. It didn't really matter. So
Yeah.
Jackson, when you were doing draft stuff, did you watch Justin Wright Foreman from Hofstra?
no, I think that he was 2019, right?
I think so.
The year that I did like really, really in depth was 2020, because we had like a year and a half to do it. That was the year I really got into the CAA stuff with Grant Riller and Nathan Knight. But I think 2020,
Grant Riller could be. I swear to God, Grant Riller's better than Peyton Pritchard.
he just had injury after injury. I liked him a lot. I think I had him like 16th on my board, which was not my final point. Not as bad as having I think I had like Poku third or something like that. I think he was. I think I might have had. I think I might have had
free
LaMelo.
agent. Someone needs to pick him up.
Yeah, I think I had LaMelo and Ant top 2, at least, which is not a terrible.
I may have had some very similar ones. We'll see.
but no, I didn't. 2019 was more of like a top. I think I did like top 20, top 25, kind of speed ran thing, and never got to the CAA. I also probably didn't know how to access CAA basketball games back then. I think that's one thing that as you get more into the basketball creator space and you're not affluent or have access to people who are affluent, you find all these dastardly ways to watch any sort of basketball.
And there's people who know how to torrent stuff. I don't know how to torrent anything or steal anything.
I don't know.
Don't
know
ask
what that
me to
means.
download shit.
I don't know
I'm
what that
not doing
means.
it.
So I don't know what the verb torrent means. Maybe that makes me an idiot, but
All right. I mean, to be fair, we both said Boston as well. So we're our count is officially at 3 Boston. No one has said anything else. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. That's all we got for you today. Do you have anything you want to plug? Anywhere you want to direct the audience while you have this platform?
Tell Josh Lerman where you want him headed to. That's one.
Shout out Josh Lerman. Damn.
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at JackFrank_JJF. Once the NBA season starts, I'll be tweeting a lot of stuff out, and I'll be posting my writing there. But it's been a pretty relaxed offseason for me, just kind of taking time to unwind and detach from the NBA season. But yeah, in a month and a half from now, I'll be right back at it, looking forward to it. But certainly I've enjoyed the leisurely time that the offseason has offered me.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. It's I don't know. Yeah, the cycle, you get so ready in September, basketball's back, and then like
Then you watch
February,
the East.
then we get to talking about I don't know, the Atlanta Hawks or whoever in March, and it's just like, oh God, Jesus, can I just watch some TV instead or something? So yeah, it's a nice time of year to enjoy it.
Hey, well, I'm excited for the Hawks this year.
Hey, the big
as someone doesn't really enjoy DeJounte Murray's game, but does enjoy Trae Young's game.
That's our sentiment as well. Things. They were my boring team last year, one of them, but it could be a nice turnaround for them this year. We'll see. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And Pau Gasol, take it away.
Lay down